You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders.
And under our beds.
And in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark. Guess what I'm sipping on?
What are you sipping on? Tell us.
Sipping on some red wine from France.
Oh, from France.
From Bordeaux.
That wouldn't happen to have anything to do with our topic for today, would it?
Oh, I think it might have a little bit. Maybe not Bordeaux, but France for sure. We're definitely gonna take a trip through France.
Hey, I'm excited. I took some French in high school. I can't speak it, but I took it.
Oh yeah, I've been studying it for a while.
You look like
you're good at it.
Wait, what are you wearing? Is that like a green ribbon?
You see this?
I saw you adjusting. Yeah, okay, wait, that's a scarf. But it's a very thin scarf.
This is off of my house robe.
Oh, it's the tie for your robe.
It's the tie around? Yeah.
You're so clever. I'm going to give you full credit for this one.
See, I'm very French today. I'm very French. I have my striped sweater and I have this
A+.
Drinking on a French wine, a legitimate French wine. I've never had it before.
Wow.
I went to the store specifically to get this. It's pretty good. It's weird. I can taste the sin. The sin.
The sin?
The sane?
I can taste the sin.
I can taste the sin.
It's evil.
That French, that Parisian water.
Parisian water is not good.
I also got French bread pizzas.
Oh, nice. So you're fully on theme. Do you know who taught me that French water, specifically Parisian water, is not good?
Who?
Mary-Kate and Ashley.
Oh.
Passport to Paris.
I was going to be like, is this like a Sesame Street thing? Like,
No.
Did they just shit on the French?
Mary-Kate and Ashley, save the day like they do because their grandfather's an ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole segment on the water treaty.
Very cool.
To provide clean water to Paris. Anyway, you're going to tell us way more cool stuff.
So we're talking about Mary-Kate and Ashley today.
Again.
Just kidding.
I keep finding ways to bring them in.
Why are we talking about France?
Yeah, why are we talking about France? Christian?
We don't begin in France, okay? We're going to get there.
All right.
So I'm not going to tell you why yet. You got to stick around.
All right. That's a tease.
Today, we are covering a little story known as The Green Ribbon.
The Green Ribbon.
Anybody ever heard of that?
I mean, I have.
How much do you know about The Green Ribbon?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I know the gist of the story, and I believe I've read it once upon a time when I was young.
Sure.
But I don't know anything about the history. I don't know anything about the person that wrote it, the origin of it.
You've come to the right place.
I know I have, because you're going to tell us.
I'm going to tell you all about it, because you're listening to That's Pretty Dark.
That's Pretty Dark.
I'm Christian.
I'm Kaylin. I don't ever do well with that cue. I don't know why.
This is not our first time doing this.
Surprisingly.
So The Green Ribbon is one of those stories that has lived in the recesses of my mind for forever. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, one of those that you forget about.
Yeah.
And then somebody just mentions something and it's like it all comes rushing back like a dream you had last night.
Yeah, that's how it happened for me with you. When you brought it up, I was like, wait a second. I know that, the gist.
So I'm going to start referring to these as from the crypt.
Oh.
These are memories from the crypt.
Nice.
Things that we have forgotten about. And they just sort of bubble back to the surface eventually. But in this instance, we might as well say this one's from the catacombs.
Nice.
A little bit of French humor.
I was going to say, there's some French references.
It's a French funny.
If you're French and you're listening, I apologize in advance.
If you're French and you're listening, congratulations.
Yeah, we wish we were you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm learning your language. I'll visit. We'll be friends. We'll drink wine.
I'm supposed to chaperone you through Europe, so I'm sure I'll be there too. But you'll translate for me because I clearly can't learn the language.
I'll translate very, very poorly.
Perfect.
So this story was published in 1984 in a collection of very, very short stories by Alvin Schwartz called In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the title's already ringing a few bells for a lot of people.
I can see the cover in my mind.
We were going to do a book report. Oh, also, this is our first book report. We didn't say that.
Oh, yeah. I've been excited for Christian to do this because this is really where he shines.
This is really where I shine, thanks. We were going to do a book report on the whole thing, all the stories in one go. It was going to be very simple, very silly, but there's so much to this particular story, and we don't want to leave anything out. And in fact, there is so much here that this is going to be a series. This is going to be a two-parter.
Yeah, you guys like Christian series.
Yeah, based on our Instagram poll.
That's right.
Yeah. Like the Origins episodes, we thought that was going to be one episode. It ended up being two. This time we're going to intentionally split this one in half on purpose.
And even if you've never heard the story, I think we're going to bring up a lot of interesting psychology, philosophy stuff.
We're going to pontificate.
Yeah.
We're going to ask a lot of questions we're not sure we can answer.
But aren't those our favorite kind of questions?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's get started. The Green Ribbon.
Part 1.
Part 1. This book was published in the I Can Read series, the quote-unquote I Can Read.
I remember the little tag, the little, it was like a grade level that it would have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a grade level. It's like a reading level, I guess. I don't know if that translates
right.
into like grades. But being in the I Can Read series means it was, for children who were learning to read. And this was level 2.
Okay.
So I have the book here in front of me. I had to go grab it.
The turning of the page. It sounds so good.
There are 4 levels. My first shared reading, there's the 1 beginning reading, 2 reading with help, which is this book, 3 reading alone, 4 advanced reading. So
it's definitely not grade level, like specific.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought of it like that.
This is the description for level 2. Engaging stories, longer sentences, and language play for developing readers. The back of the book says, high interest stories for developing readers. It's like you're learning to read on your own now. So here's a story about a woman whose head falls off.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler. All these stories in this book are very scary.
You're kidding.
And it's scary for adults when you realize how much there is to it. I mean, it's scary anyway.
It's haunting.
Yeah,
It's
very disturbing. And I remember reading it as a kid because at my school, there was this one classroom, and at the back of it, there was a bookshelf with all these books for children. Because it's one of the ones you'd sneak back to the back of the room during free time and go try to find it and read all the scary stories because you felt like the teacher didn't know it was there. Because you're thinking, how is this in my little private Christian school?
Yeah.
We're not allowed to read anything like this, and it's just here? There's no way that she knows this is here.
So did you really feel like you were sneaking around when you found it?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Because it was in the back corner. It wasn't well lit. The teacher couldn't see you from her desk in the front of the room. So you felt
really were hiding.
Yeah, you felt like she didn't know it was there. Of course she did. But it just was like a secret little find.
And you know what? I think that's exactly what it's meant to do. I think it's meant to entice reading to the point where it's like, this is a forbidden thing that's so exciting and fun. And, it gives you that motivation. And the teacher's secretly sitting back going, he's reading. That's great.
Look at that. So that's one of the darkest, eeriest things about this particular version of the story and a couple others. This is a story that was intended to be read by children. And let's be honest, we're all pretty glad that we got to read it as kids, right?
Yeah, mostly.
I'm going to leave it tucked away in a corner of the room where my kid can find it and think that they found some, mysterious, dark, secret thing, right? Because that's part of the magic. Before we get started, we have to thank a listener. Her name is Melissa.
That's right. I forgot. I totally forgot, but you're right.
Yeah, and she's been one of our listeners from the very first episode. We had an email from her from the very beginning, so we want to thank her for reaching out and reminding us that this story existed.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa.
We appreciate you.
You rock.
It feels very wintry. Feels appropriate for December.
Yeah, well, there's also that Fleet Foxes song about their heads falling off and like
I think of that
wearing
every
scarves
single
and
time.
stuff.
Yes. What is that song called? It's like
White Winter Hymnal.
Yes, White Winter Hymnal.
I believe. If I'm wrong, I'm going to hate myself.
No, that's correct.
Look it up if you don't know that song. Good band. I genuinely thought that this episode would take, 20, 30 minutes. We'd read the story. We'd joke about how it's, pretty dark. But a very, simple, quick Google search told me that there was way more to this.
Wow.
It's way more involved than I expected. So thanks, Melissa, for taking away so much of my sleep. As a gesture of gratitude, I'm going to do my best to take away some of yours in return.
We hope we do it justice for you.
So if nothing else, Melissa, this story was published in 1984, and you happened to mention in your email that you were an 84 baby.
Nice.
So this came out the year you were born. I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of synchronicities.
You know how I love those.
But whatever it is, just know that you've done this to yourself. Our hands are clean.
That's right.
No blood on these hands, but lots of blood in this story, so get ready. Ooh. I'm pumped.
He's sipping his red wine.
As I sip my red wine from France. I'm such a nerd.
He really is. You guys, I've not seen him this bummed for an episode in quite a while.
I'm so excited. So Melissa's exact request for everybody listening was, can we talk about the girl with the green ribbon? What the heck? Well, we're going to talk about it all right. So grab your flashlights, everybody, and hold on to your heads.
Because
I'm about to tell you what the heck. and it's going to get pretty dark.
I'm ready.
Alvin Schwartz. I've mentioned him a few times now. We both have in the context of this podcast. And I think one day we'll do solid book reports on the scary stories to tell in the dark eventually.
Oh, yeah. There's still plenty there.
He was an American author and journalist who wrote more than 50 books throughout his lifetime.
Better than me.
Better than me. He was particularly interested in folklore with a style that emphasized a lot of humor and wordplay. He's one of the many writers from his generation that seemed to really prize that kind of like wit and charm.
I love that.
Alongside Dr. Seuss and Shel Silverstein.
Yes, I was about to say a Shel Silverstein.
He fits right into all that, just with like horror, grotesque, gruesome things.
Which is, I mean, yeah.
Like the Brothers Grimm before him, Alvin Schwartz was a collector of particularly dark stories that he spent much of his career adapting for children, adding that wit and charm to smooth things over and let kids know that it's okay to laugh about morbid things, especially when those morbid things are more than a little frightening.
Man, he was doing what we're doing so long before we were.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, again, probably one of the main reasons why we have this podcast.
Yeah.
Because it's another example of somebody who made scary stories feel safe and comfortable.
And accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you looking for?
So.
Oh, you got the book.
I'm going to read the story real quick.
Oh, read it to us, please. Please do.
I practiced reading this the other day.
That sounds about right.
It doesn't mean I'm going to do a good job.
Oh, definitely not.
Once there was a girl named Jenny. She was like all the other girls, except for one thing. She always wore a green ribbon around her neck.
Yes.
There was a boy named Alfred in her class. Alfred liked Jenny, and Jenny liked Alfred.
Isn't that sweet?
Sure, it's sweet. One day he asked her, "Why do you wear that ribbon all the time?" "I cannot tell you," said Jenny. But Alfred kept asking, "Why do you wear it?" And Jenny would say, "It's not important."
You gotta trust her, Alfred.
"I think it's important." But Jenny and Alfred grew up and fell in love. One day they got married. After their wedding, Alfred said, "Now that we are married, you must tell me about the green ribbon." "You must still wait," said Jenny.
Wow.
"I will tell you when the right time comes."
You gotta give her autonomy, Alfred. It's the only way.
Years passed. Alfred and Jenny grew old. One day, Jenny became very sick. The doctor told her she was dying. Jenny called Alfred to her side. "Alfred," she said, "now I can tell you about the green ribbon. Untie it, and you will see why I could not tell you before." Slowly and carefully, Alfred untied the ribbon, and Jenny's head fell off.
Oh my God. Terrible.
That's it.
That's all. That's the end.
Very short and sweet. And yet, absolutely
I certainly
terrifying.
read that as a child. It may have been a school library, just like you. Like, I don't think I owned it.
No, I didn't own it.
And to think that, she had him wait their whole life. And he trusted her. Isn't that something?
That is kind of sweet because this is the only version in which that happens. This is the only sweet version that exists.
As much as you can call a story sweet when the woman's head falls off.
Yeah, we're going to get really, really into this, but God bless you, Alvin Schwartz, because you made it palatable. You really, really made it as decent as possible.
Kudos.
Because the symbolism here is unreal.
Yeah.
Which also challenges our definitions of death that we're going to get into.
Oh, man. We've got a lot to learn today.
Whew. I hope you guys are as pumped as I am because I am so pumped.
He's so pumped, you guys.
God. I have to keep stretching it
the look on, I haven't seen this look on Christian's face in quite a long time.
I'm not easily excitable, although I'm a very simple man.
Almost not excitable at all, one might say.
Ladies. Excite me.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
So all these stories are based off of older urban legends, little motifs Alvin Schwartz found, collected, and repurposed for children. He did this a whole bunch. At the back of this book, there's a section where he explains where these ideas came from. The green ribbon is based on a European folk motif in which a red thread is worn around a person's neck. The thread marks the place where the head was cut off, then reattached. And how this made it into a book for children, I couldn't tell you. Honestly, I just couldn't.
Well, they made the ribbon green.
Well, no, okay, yeah, we do get into that symbolism, but that doesn't help.
Oh, no.
Not to knock my man, Alvin Schwartz. I love this guy a whole lot, but I found this explanation overly simplified and in some ways a bit presumptuous. And throughout this episode, I'm going to do my best to explain what I mean by that.
Okay.
One of the things I noticed in my research is that because there are so many different versions of this motif, a few people online have gotten them sort of mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one person's blog post said that Alvin Schwartz's story was called The Velvet Ribbon, which is incorrect. The story, The Velvet Ribbon, is a distinct version of the tale told by Anne McGovern, published in her 1970 children's book, Ghostly Fun.
I have heard of that.
Yeah. And then recorded later that same year for the Scholastic record, The Haunted House and Other Spooky Poems and Tales. It was also published in a book called that, which I bought a copy of recently.
I'm shocked.
This is the version where, after her husband's continuous pleas to tell him what the ribbon is for, the woman tells him over and over the ominous words, "You'll be sorry if I do, so I won't."
Oh my gosh.
And at the end, when he has removed the ribbon against her wishes, as her head falls to the floor into the moonlight, she wails,
"I told you you'd be sorry."
Oh man. Yeah, that's rough.
As I've said, there are many iterations of this tale, but here are a few of the commonalities between most of them, if not all of them.
Nice.
Number 1, a woman wears a bit of fabric around her neck, but refuses to explain why. Number 2, she meets a man who falls in love with her upon sight and wishes to know why she wears this piece of fabric. Number 3, the man eventually removes the fabric, causing her head to fall off, implying that the only thing keeping her head attached to her body was that piece of fabric. So, when you lay it all out like that, very simple, certain themes become very obvious. So I'm going to break that down.
Okay.
Number 1, a woman has a secret. Number 2, a man who becomes obsessed with her and wishes to learn her secret eventually gets his way and exposes it. Number 3, thus killing his idea of who he thought she was, and or effectively killing the relationship.
Yes.
Or you could even say, in this land of symbolism and metaphor, that her secret is so awful in his eyes that once he learns of it, he actually kills her.
Oh my gosh. I hope that's not true.
Well, it's been done.
Okay. Well,
I mean, in real life.
My wheels are turning here because you know me and the journey that I've been on in the last several years and like
absolutely.
Feminism.
It's more fitting that you would cover this, but I'm going to do my best to present all these
I appreciate
details
that.
for you to churn and help me figure out.
Like, so the way that you just presented it is essentially by no fault of yours, because I do think most of the stories are, but it's almost focused on the male perspective of what they don't know, what they need to know, quote unquote, need to know, and then what they find out and how it affects them. That's kind of the perspective.
Oh, I have 2 perspectives from the female perspective and the male perspective.
All right.
That perspective, it does exist, and I think it's very unfair. But I think it's incriminating the man more than you think.
Okay. But the listener knows that I've noted this.
You have noted this. No, you're definitely on the right track.
Okay.
You're definitely there, because that's where I was too. This could simply be a metaphor for the man's inability to come to terms with the fact that his wife has a past that she has chosen not to share with him until she finds him worthy of the details. Or it could be that she knows he won't be able to come to terms with the information itself, and so she keeps it from him, which drives him insane because he's unable to cope with the lack of information and therefore the lack of control. The fact that the woman has something of her own drives him absolutely mad, to the point that he's willing to violate her trust and her body to take matters into his own hands, to undo the fabric from around her neck, either by untying it, pulling it free, or cutting it.
Okay.
And all the different versions, these are the different things that can happen. So there do seem to be, as I said, 2 schools of thought in regard to the symbolism here. These 2 different perspectives. One angle is from the female perspective, and the other is from the male perspective.
Yes.
Which would you like to hear about first?
Oh man, I don't even know.
This is a choose your own adventure.
It feels like a choose your own adventure. I feel too powerful. Tell me the male perspective first.
Okay.
Because I think I have a grasp, being a female.
Sure.
I have a bit of a grasp on the female perspective.
I kind of like that because we're here to talk about the female perspective. So let's get the male out of the way first.
Okay.
Okay. The male perspective.
Man, this is like philosophy, sociology. This is all the good stuff.
This has also been described, this type of story, as just another example of, quote unquote, be careful what you wish for, or curiosity killed the cat.
Oh, we're familiar with these, aren't we?
Implying that maybe our deepest, darkest curiosities, our suspicions about another person might might
His eyebrows are raised. His eyes are wide. Might. He's emphasizing that, folks.
might be totally justified. So when that person says, you don't want to know, you'll be sorry if I tell you, maybe we ought to just take their word for it.
Yeah. This is trust, right?
Trust.
This is trust. It's the ultimate trust.
It is trust.
I mean, Alfred trusted her so much, but he waited so many years.
Alfred is sweet.
Yeah.
Alfred did as he was told.
He loved her.
He's a good guy. He's the only good guy in really
Wow.
any of these versions, to be honest with you.
Man.
I love Jenny and Alfred.
Yeah, Jenny and Alfred.
They're sweet.
I got you guys.
So what do you think? Is there room for secrets? Say within a marriage, weighing individualism against trust and the fact that a marriage historically is a union between two people who become one.
Okay, I feel
This is deep.
it's very deep. I think that in a patriarchal society, particularly, Christian society, although there are other religions that also play into a lot of patriarchal norms and tropes.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout history, there has been this trickle-down effect where the male has absolute control in a male-female relationship, partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And that all stemmed from essentially nothing except for the fact that men wanted to be in control. And so a lot of the principles that we're taught as fact as children, it comes from just the whims of a man at one point in history, and how they infused that into cultural norms, the Bible.
Yeah.
That emphasis on male control is what created the idea that this is a union. There are no secrets. There is no unknown, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't ever, in most circles, most places, that does not apply to the man like it does to the woman, because the man has built-in conventions that say, she can't handle it. She's the weaker vessel. She won't be able to handle it. You should just handle these other things. You should handle the money. You should handle these issues. But that's not considered a secret or an unknown. It's just about control.
Yeah.
Pretty much entirely. And I have a lot of deep-seated feelings and opinions on all of that. But I think, yes, in a healthy relationship, there should be room to have your own autonomy, to have your own individuality. Like, you're still a human person and that exists independent of this relationship that you're in. And to expect everything of somebody like that is really violating.
Yeah.
And if you trust the person, you'll share what you feel comfortable sharing, and vice versa. And if you trust the person, it doesn't matter what you don't know, to an extent.
Right.
Obviously, I think there are ethics behind it. I think there are things that you probably should tell another person if you're in a close relationship or whatever. But it just, I don't know. The idea that you can't have anything for yourself is a patriarchal norm that I don't believe in.
Yeah, I'm with you. Because historically, men were the ones who they used their power and their camaraderie to say that only men could be educated. And
yeah, they would gatekeep whatever they wanted to gatekeep.
Yeah.
But a woman can't have anything of her own. Couldn't even vote, couldn't keep money, couldn't keep a job.
Yeah, right.
Right.
But everything that taught a woman about how life's supposed to work was written by a man.
Exactly.
So when a woman is an individual and he doesn't know something about her, it's like he can't handle it.
Yeah. But do you know why he can't handle it, though? I mean, many reasons and many personality traits and types of people. But I think he can't handle it because he's always been told that he's entitled to it.
Right.
Always. He's been told that he's entitled to all of this. The woman belongs to him at a certain point, right?
Yeah.
It's a property thing.
Yeah.
From their father to their husband. And so it's like he has spent his entire life being told that he is entitled to something. And
totally.
I don't think that's ethical, but hey.
No, for sure. For sure.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
No. I'm just saying, we're going to ask many more questions today than we actually answer. It's just themes. It's concepts.
And I mean, I appreciate that because it's just allowing people to think about, because I mean, I never thought about this. I was taught all of this growing up and never questioned it because it was God's way or it made sense in that type of perspective.
As a man, it's difficult because I don't know how much of my life experience is what I've been taught through this system.
I feel for you and men in general. I do feel for you in that way because you can't necessarily separate it and it's difficult to learn.
I don't know how to differentiate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your personal preference and what was taught to you?
It's important to note that the Alfred character, not always named Alfred, he already knows that she won't tell him about this thing. He already knows she has this secret, and yet he pursues her anyway. I guess it's their ego after a while. Maybe their ego tells them oh, she'll tell me one day. I'll get her to tell me one day. Or he just tells himself he doesn't care. And then like later, once the gossamer fades and he realizes that it's, the ribbon he was sort of obsessed with. It's the secret. It's the mystery. It's the it factor, the edge.
Oh,
it's what she's got that other girls don't got, In one of the stories, I think the Velvet Ribbon, it says that he can't even look her in the eye anymore. The only part of her he can even look at is the velvet ribbon around her neck.
Yeah.
He can't even look at her.
Wow.
He becomes obsessed with that.
It's an obsession. Like,
it's crazy.
But I think you're right. I think you're exactly right that it's an ego thing. He becomes obsessed not with her or with what she could be or the potential. Like a lot of times you're falling in love with somebody and it's that potential that kind of drives you, the things you don't know but you want to know. And then in that scenario, you're realizing it was never that.
Yeah.
It was just the ego of I don't know this and I hate that I don't know this.
I think a lot of the time, especially if you're going to fall in love at first sight, which, love isn't love. Love is not what we think it is. Love is, it's a chemical imbalance in your body that makes you feel a certain way about a certain person or thing.
Yeah.
But to fall in love that quickly, that's more of an infatuation with the idea of the person, which look at the TV show You.
Oh, yeah.
He falls in love with who he thinks the person
you
is.
Create this idea in your mind, you prop it up and you decide. Yeah.
As soon as you realize that person's not that, everything fades.
And spoiler alert, they never will be.
Never.
They never are.
Never, ever.
It's never going to be exactly what you imagine because that person that you have on the other end of your fantasy is a human with wants, desires, needs, a whole history and past, a whole complete person.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of lose that in the idea of something or someone else.
It's almost like love is an invention.
I thought you had further to go with that, so I was like,
no.
Backing off. I mean, it can be. Yeah.
So you want to hear the female perspective now?
Oh, yeah, please hit me now that I've commented all over the place.
That was just one side of the coin. Well, I guess we should say masculine and feminine, not male and female.
Oh, you're totally correct. Yeah. Let's go with that.
I don't really know. The stories are always male and female, so let's just, man and woman.
This is for the sake of the story, but yes.
Everything that I'm presenting comes from versions of this story that have been told.
Yes.
I'm philosophizing, I'm throwing hypotheticals at it, but all of the specifics and the terminology and the details are coming from the stories themselves. So if anybody has an issue with something I'm talking about.
It's a paradigm that, we're covering it based on the Green Ribbon story.
I'm covering things that already exist. I'm just talking about them. That's it.
Here.
I hope nobody's offended by this, but that's my qualifier. Doing my best.
No, I appreciate that. It's a story that we're commenting on.
Exactly.
Or a series of stories, a litany of stories that we're commenting on.
This one article suggested that the man's aggressive attempts to remove the fabric from her neck is latent sexual assault symbolism. I don't disagree.
I read that article.
Yeah? Yep. It's one of the more philosophical articles that I read.
That was literally the only piece of media that I read about this.
That's a good one to read. And again, all these articles are going to be in our show notes.
Yes.
This all harkens back to something you could probably touch on more than me, the expectations of women in society and marriage, which you've already talked about at this point. But
I didn't really cover the whole, her body is property as well. But yeah,
for sure.
I have a lot of thoughts on that too.
Women have been taught for generations they must submit to their husbands and obey and do as they're told.
And give whatever they want.
And for a very long time, one of the worst discoveries, quote unquote worst discoveries a man could make was that his bride wasn't a virgin.
Yep.
This has gone back for a very long time. Taken to the extreme, the worst secret could be that a woman is not only not a virgin, but was once a sex worker.
Oh, God. Sorry, I'm having visceral reactions to the blatant just patriarchy.
I know. Trust me. There's no full articles and things about a woman's worst fears in a marriage with a husband. Usually,
because who cares?
That fear is usually just that the husband's a murderous, brutish asshole, and just beats her.
Right.
For men, it's all these things, but specifically that you aren't clean.
Quote unquote clean.
Quote unquote clean. And the man can do whatever he wants, and the woman never gets to question it once. I read in this one article that this motif, this fabric around the neck, which you'll notice, again, I'm wearing around my neck as a male.
I really hope your head doesn't fall off.
And that comes at the end when I take it off. I've read that this motif may have been a cautionary tale about marrying a sex worker.
Oh my gosh. So then you find out this, like you said, you find the secret out that you can't handle.
It's a big secret, right? That's one of the ideas, is that it's a big secret that she's not telling you because she used to be a sex worker. And I'm using sex worker versus a lot of other terms that have been used.
Sure, because sex worker is the correct term because it's work and it's profession.
Exactly. It's a profession. While that is pretty shitty, there may be an explanation for this.
Okay.
This idea is likely due to the fact that for a very long time, in cultures around the world, many, many cultures, a black ribbon around the neck, or as we know it today, a choker, was oftentimes an indicator that a woman was in fact a sex worker.
Wow. I've never heard that.
I found that in more than one article, so I've had it now confirmed.
Wow. I mean, I wear chokers all the time. So
I mean, sure, no, it's very common today, and you should not feel bad about it.
Yeah, I know. And
wear
I mean,
your chokers, ladies,
the
please.
90s made it.
Men, wear your chokers. Who cares?
Sex workers and not. It doesn't matter.
It's just really funny.
That is a very interesting. Wow. This whole thing is like exploding in my mind now.
Yeah. But while that small detail is true, I don't know how much of that bled into this ghost story motif necessarily. Maybe one or two versions, definitely not all of them. Because not only have chokers been around for like a very, very long time, like forever, chokers were also in vogue among European royalty and people of power.
I was thinking of that.
At the same time that chokers were being worn to indicate sex workership.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
So it came first with the royal set.
It was always amongst royalty and people of power.
And so it became, I guess that makes sense.
Post-French Revolution, women began wearing chokers.
Okay.
In France, at least. Maybe in other, I don't know all the timelines, but I know that like ancient Egypt and even before then, women were wearing chokers.
Yeah.
And they weren't wearing chokers to indicate
anything like
sex
that.
work.
Yeah.
So that's more of a modern thing. But still, I still kind of laugh at it because it's funny that so many wires were getting crossed in Europe at this time.
But I mean, that it really checks out. Like, it makes so much sense.
It was a spit in the face of these people with money.
I see. This is like an act of rebellion, more so.
It's an act of rebellion, exactly.
To wear a choker because it's representative of the upper crust, and you're taking that for yourself. Yeah.
It's just really funny because then the women who were the more privileged class and they wore these chokers to show how dignified they were and how rich they were, all of a sudden, very poor women who they hated with every fiber of their being were walking around wearing them too, showing them off, going, hey, look at what I got, you know? Wow. It's this like, and they had to just sort of look in horror.
That's just like a middle finger. I kind of like that.
Yeah, honestly, I like it. I think it's funny.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to think of it every time I wear a choker now. And I do pretty frequently. I used to a few years ago.
Wear your chokers, boys and girls, friends and neighbors. Wear them proudly.
Friends and neighbors. Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, wear the choker.
I'm wearing my choker right now.
It sure is. If you want to count it as such. It's a bathrobe tie, but, you know, it's close enough.
It is what you want it to be. It's a velvet ribbon. It's a scarf. It's a black band. It represents whatever you want it to mean, as we're going to find out.
Here we go.
As I sip my wine from Bordeaux.
I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I found that it rouses.
So French. Maybe Cajun French, but you know.
It actually is. It's from Louisiana.
Yeah.
So the origins of this story are unknown.
Yes.
This motif, we don't really know where it came from or who told it first.
Because there's so many intertwined stories.
They go back so far. But we do have a general idea of the time period in which it probably originated.
Okay.
And the events that led to its invention. Most sources say the original version of this story, although unknown, is undoubtedly French.
People are sure of the French origin, huh?
We're pretty certain. And that, you Phoebes, brings us to our brief, yet macabre, walk through the reign of terror during the French Revolution.
Here we go.
And up the steps toward Madame la Guillotine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to start singing songs from the musical The Scarlet Pimpernel.
Oh, yeah?
It was based on the French Revolution. You can just ignore me.
Sounds like we should cover that one day.
It's pretty great.
You've mentioned that to me before, and I've never seen it.
Oh, man. It's a movie. Like, there's a non-musical film, like I don't know, from the 70s or something, 80s. But it's also a musical that I very much enjoy.
Nice. You'll have to educate me, for sure.
Will do.
We'll drink some French wine from Bordeaux.
Hey,
and we'll we'll discuss. The earliest written version of this story, as far as we know, is The Adventure of the German Student by Washington Irving, who is one of my favorite authors. You may have heard of his most famous story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Yes.
So this is not his one and only foray into the headless ghost character.
He seems to be obsessed.
Yeah, he has a few, actually.
Did he witness a beheading or something?
I don't know if he did specifically, but he's another one of those old collectors of old stories.
Yeah, and that just was his niche. He was like, this is where I live.
He was into it, yeah.
Okay.
He loved that old gothic kind of horror story. So he was just sort of a connoisseur of headless ghosts.
There's one in the Bible, too.
A headless character in the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
Please explain.
Absalom, or what's his name? I remember the story, but he's like running through the forest on a horse, and his hair gets tangled in the tree.
Oh, yeah.
It decapitates him. Mm-hmm.
Yes, his head comes off. Yes.
Yeah. Is that his name? I can't remember if it's Absalom.
I don't know what his name is, but I know that story.
It's been a while since my Bible trivia days.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We'll have to cover that one day. Yeah.
And they go back so far. Like I feel like it's a very deep like fear in the human psyche.
Losing your head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This story, The Adventure of the German Student, is set in Paris during the French Revolution. The main character in this telling, the German student, he meets a female character one night as she's sitting at the, on the bottom step of the guillotine platform, and it's raining and there's lightning and she's weeping and dramatic, and he basically falls in love with her immediately. He's smitten for reasons I won't get into because that's getting way too far into the story that we're not covering. But he invites her back to his apartment to get her out of the rain, quote unquote. And once he has her in the proper lighting, he can see that she's wearing a black band around her neck. But he doesn't obsess over the band, and he does not try to figure out why she's wearing it. He doesn't try to figure out what it means. The most significant thing here in this version is that he does fall in love with her very quickly and becomes like obsessed with the idea of her to the point that he vows to be hers forever. And the next morning, he discovers that she's dead, and he calls the police, and one of the officers, who is just horrified, explains that she had been beheaded the day before.
Oh.
Her head had been removed via guillotine.
So she's a ghost.
So she's a ghost or a corpse because she's lying there on his bed.
Oh.
Like she's still there.
Ew.
So we don't really know what happened. The officer walks over, undoes the band from her neck, and her head falls off.
It's much worse for some reason.
It's creepier. So this is the first written version that we can find, that we know of, the earliest written version. Undoubtedly, there were versions told before this one, but this was written in 1824.
Okay. I was about to ask when it's from.
A mere 25 years after the French Revolution ended.
Yeah. I mean, and so many people had trauma related to a beheading, a guillotine.
The next known written version is in a novel by Alexandre Dumas.
Good job.
It was published in 1850. It was called La Femme au collier de velours.
The woman with the velvet collar?
Necklace. Very close. Oh, you almost had it.
I almost did.
This version is very similar to Irving's version. It also involves a young German male traveling to Paris during the height of the Reign of Terror, only to become utterly horrified by the guillotine itself and positively entranced by a mysterious young French woman, as well as a great deal of speculation regarding the man's mental state. So there's a lot of talk out there that maybe Dumas got his idea for this novel from Irving himself, but there's no proof. It's just as possible that Dumas heard the same version that Irving heard originally, thus inspiring their own separate versions of the same story.
Yeah, that's kind of how it works. Just different branches of the same tree.
So the fact that one of the most famous ghost story motifs of all time came from the French Revolution is really no surprise.
No.
Seeing how it was considered to be the most significant and most violent of the Western revolutions.
Man.
And let me tell you, there were a whole bunch of Western revolutions.
Oh yeah, there's a little American one.
So there's the French Revolution, but the Reign of Terror itself lasted less than a year.
Yeah, it was a short time period.
Something like 17,000 people were executed via guillotine in less than a year.
Oh.
Now, there's a lot to the French Revolution, but I'm not going to get into that. I can't even break the surface of it because it's so much and it's so complicated.
So you're going to pick and pull out the most relevant pieces.
Now, however, having said that, another very interesting interpretation of the metaphor of the hiding the scar around the neck, the mark of where your head was cut off, is simply political, insinuating that you can never really know the political affiliations someone might have deep down underneath the guise they wear in public. The removing of this fabric, this disguise, could reveal that you might secretly be worthy of the guillotine's blade.
Wow. I'm also hearing a lot more COVID parallels.
Ooh, interesting.
Mask and such.
Masks.
The fabric reveals.
Ooh, there should be a modern mask version of this.
Oh, yes.
You take off the mask and you find that you've got, like, I don't know, syphilis. What's an
There's
STD?
lots of other things. Oh my God. COVID taught me so much about people I know and their political affiliations that I just would not have assumed.
Yeah.
Or maybe would have assumed in some cases, but
Imagine if there was a giant scaffold with a blade type mechanism that cut people's heads off that, depending on which side of the mask ordinance you're on, you could be executed from one day to the other depending on which side you're on. Like, just imagine that for a second, that you don't wear a mask, so you're beheaded. Or you do wear a mask, so you're beheaded.
wow.
It's really, really, really complicated.
And a lot of people want to believe that they're persecuted to the point that that's what's going on, but I digress.
Here's a little bit of guillotine history.
Tell me about the guillotine.
The act of beheading as a form of capital punishment was nothing new for the French Revolution. It'd been around for a long time. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that earlier versions of the guillotine specifically, it wasn't called that, but versions of it existed since like the Middle Ages. I can't fathom how poorly these worked.
Which almost makes it worse. I mean,
It's much worse.
yeah. I mean, there are tons of medieval torture devices. Like, I've been to the Tower of London in London.
Yeah.
And seeing, like, the museum.
It's like a dream of mine. I've never been, but I have to go.
I've toured the Tower of London, and it is just unreal. Just like the drawing and quartering and the machines they would use to do that. These archaic ways that they would torture and punish people physically. So yeah, I can't, like, sorry, I know I keep interrupting you on tangents like that, but
You're adding flavor. You're just throwing those spices, that garlic, that onion.
spicing it up.
With a paprika.
Yeah, real spicy. But it is really kind of difficult. It was like, I didn't expect it to be hard on me, really, because it's history and you read about it in your textbooks, whatever.
Yeah.
When I was walking in that place, knowing that people had been brutally killed, by these means,
It changes things.
it's very difficult to like wrap your head around.
Yeah, for sure.
And even to want to.
Yeah.
And yeah, imagining a guillotine that doesn't work, it means that the torture, the pain lasts that much longer.
And when they weren't using a guillotine, it was just like a sword or an axe or something that was just literally a person trying to like chop wood, but it's your neck. So it was never good to be killed. It was never good to be like, capital punishment hasn't really had a lot of improvements. That's why it's being outlawed in a lot of countries and a lot of states here in the US.
Because how can you improve upon murder? I mean,
It should be outlawed.
Yeah.
But man, it's better than it used to be. I think
so
because
you're saying you'd rather go by lethal injection than by guillotine?
well, no. I want guillotine.
You do. Okay, it's faster.
If I have to go by like court mandated execution,
Well, please don't ever do anything that's going to put us in that scenario. But
no, I will never. This is why I can say this and not like, this is why I can say this and get some sleep tonight. I think I'd rather be guillotined.
Yeah. And now after you've studied it, that's how you feel?
I think so.
Okay. Tell us why that is.
The process was perfected during the French Revolution. And I say perfected because it's the closest thing to a perfect death I think we have. And I'm going to get flack for that. That's just my opinion.
That's your opinion. We're here to hear it.
In European history, beheadings were typically reserved for the execution of criminals of noble birth. Criminals of lower class were typically hanged or drawn and quartered, disemboweled. These were all really terrible ways to die. Being beheaded was like, it was akin to being struck down in battle because it was always seen as a noble death, right? Like for king and country, as they say.
Yeah.
In 1789, after the start of the revolution, a man named Joseph Ignace Guillotin, I think that's how you say it, passed a law that said all executions should be carried out by, quote unquote, means of a machine, which was supposed to be a more humanitarian approach.
You give a human being that step back. You're not causing a human to kill another human by hand.
Right. Yeah. It's
Somehow that makes it okay. I don't know.
Slightly better, I guess. Yeah.
In these times, don't endorse the guillotine.
Don't endorse the guillotine. Yeah, no, not today, for sure. And also, somehow this extended this privileged execution to those of common birth. bringing equality to the masses, whether they liked it or not.
Yeah. This is the one way there was equality in the 1700s.
Having this law in place, the guillotine was invented by a French surgeon and physiologist named Antoine Louis. And it was first called the Louisette or Louison until it later became commonly known as the guillotine. And it has a bunch of names. But my favorite, as it became known in the French underworld, the widow.
Yeah. Oh,
which
yeah.
I think is very ominous and scary.
Yeah.
The two most prestigious people it killed was King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette.
Yes.
Which I think is kind of a fun parallel because their names, so King Louis and Marie Antoinette.
Yeah. Interesting.
Antoine Louis invented it. Pretty weird.
That is weird.
Pretty weird. Pretty weird.
Would you say that's pretty weird?
I would say it's pretty weird. But there's another vaguely familiar version of this that has to do with a, young Frenchman meeting a young French woman in a Parisian cemetery. And she's wearing a red ribbon around her neck. And he's like immediately smitten with her. He's talking to her. And by some action or another, he grabs hold of her like ribbon or scarf or whatever it is and pulls on it, pulling it from her neck, and her head falls off. And I don't know how old that version is, but I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I really do.
I wish we knew. I wish we knew, like, the timeline.
I know. I wish there was, like, a definitive, like, this was the first version. I think it was just spread around in certain circles.
Yeah.
We're at the halfway point, so this is our, the end of our part one.
Oh, okay.
Technically.
These are our ponderings. So, to recap what we've talked about, just for kicks and giggles, this children's story that was published, when was this published? Alvin Schwartz published it in
1984.
1984, that's right. We talked about it for Melissa. So
Happy birthday, Melissa.
This children's story from 1984, it reaches back. So far, we've learned into the 1700s, but potentially further.
200.
We just don't know.
250 years.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I, for one, am excited to see where else this goes. And see what other feminist things I can find a way to bring up on the podcast.
I mean, we've barely gotten started.
Thanks for joining us on this ride that we've yet to see the end of. We'll see where it goes next week.
Yeah. Thanks for stepping up onto the platform with us and laying down your head.
Yikes. Hope you're getting all wintry and cozy this December.
So everybody you see walking around with a scarf out there.
Oh, you never know what might be hiding underneath.
Yeah, maybe give it a tug, see what happens.
Or don't,
Yeah, or don't do that. Anyway, cool guys.
See you next week.
For the conclusion, too. The green ribbon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettyddarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.